Today we will consider Bill C-293 during the first hour before proceeding to committee business in camera. During the second hour, in accordance with our routine motion, I'm informing the committee that all remote participants, specifically Mr. Erskine Smith, have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. It's now my pleasure to welcome Mr. Nathaniel Erskine Smith, Member of Parliament for Beaches, East York, who is joining us today via video conference to speak about Bill C-293, an act respecting pandemic prevention and preparedness. Nathaniel, I know you've got a few things going on in your life. It's very good to have you here with us. You know the drill. You have 5 minutes for your opening statement. The floor is yours.
Monsieur le Président, juste avant de commencer, pour éviter...
Mr. Speaker, before we begin, so that I don't interrupt the witness, there is an adjustment that we need to be made on the interpretation because the auxiliary channel is working, but the French channel is not. And this might end up switching when there is a change from one interpreter to another. There is no sound on the French channel. Thank you, Mr. Thériault. I understand that this is an adjustment, but we do have interpretation. It's just a bit different than usual. Yes, as long as it remains consistent. Because on the French channel, you're coming through in English. The auxiliary channel is working.
Thanks, Sean. And thanks to everyone for the time today. I have to admit, it's a bit odd to be the one presenting instead of the one asking questions, so bear with me. This bill is really straightforward in many respects. We've all just lived through a devastating pandemic. It's upended our lives in so many different ways. It's taken lives. It has damaged businesses. It has undermined livelihoods. It has upset schooling and on and on and on. We don't want to live through another one. And there are a couple things we need to do. One is to take every step we can to reduce the risk of a future pandemic. And there are steps we can take, working here domestically and also working with international partners. And we need to make sure that when the next one does come, that we are best prepared for it. And I don't propose that I've managed to include every single thing that should be included in this piece of legislation, but the architecture is there. And what it does, and it's an accountability architecture that would require the government every 3 years, and you could consider changing it to 5, but on a regular basis, that the government would say, here is our pandemic prevention and preparedness plan, table it in Parliament, and then parliamentarians from all parties and working with experts could hold the government to account on its plan. Is enough being done? Can we take additional steps to reduce risk? What are other countries doing that we aren't doing? What's in their plan that isn't in ours? And it is essential that we have that ongoing accountability because if you look at the experience with SARS, there was a review, there was a report, there were recommendations, and some were even acted on, but not all. And there wasn't a recurring accountability such that it fell off the table. And when we came to the COVID pandemic, we weren't as prepared as we ought to have been. And frankly, we didn't take the steps we could have taken to prevent COVID in the first place. So the architecture is there. And I almost called it the One Health Bill. It's the Pandemic Prevention and Preparedness Act. I almost called it the One Health Bill because on the prevention side, and we already have a One Health framework at Health Canada working with agriculture, but on the prevention side, it is incredibly important that we keep in mind and we take to heart and we keep in this bill this idea, and it's grounded in science, it's grounded in international bodies and grounded in science here in Canada, that animal health, environmental health, and human health are interconnected ideas. And if we don't have a clear-eyed focus on environmental health, that can impact animal health, which can then impact human health. And it's especially important when you consider the particular risk posed by zoonoses. And if you have other experts that testify in the course of these proceedings on C-293, you will hear over and again that the core risk, the primary risk of another pandemic is a zoonotic disease and spillover risk from animals. Okay, so that's on the prevention and One Health side. At a high level, I just want to say there's a lot in this bill, and I consulted with the United Nations Environment Programme's report around preventing future pandemics. I consulted with the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystems report around preventing future pandemics, including consulting with a Canadian expert involved in that report, consulted with the independent panel, which has written reports on pandemic prevention and preparedness, and worked directly with the researchers who wrote and put those reports together, and consulted with a range of other experts. And that's how this bill came to be. Again, I don't propose that it's perfect, and I would expect amendments are going to be forthcoming. And I want to say amendments should be forthcoming. One, the review section in the bill, I know, has caused some consternation because there was some question of should it be independent. And my view has generally been there should be some more fulsome, searching, independent review. This review is more focused on informing the plan, but I don't want to get into the politics of it. I understand there's an agreement to remove that section of the bill, and I'm comfortable with that. And that seems right by me in terms of the conversations that have been had. The second piece is on specific language in the bill. And I would say in everything that you do, improve it. Take certain language out if you don't like it, add other language in if there's language missing. At all times, my ask is, and it's how I came to this legislation at all times, make sure that everything we do is going to put in place an architecture where a future government, this government, the next government 20 years from now, 50 years from now, is going to be required to turn their minds to certain issues that are core to pandemic prevention and preparedness, and just follow the science. And so there are certain, I know I've received some questions. I engaged with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, for example, on the agriculture amendments. They said maybe be even tighter and more specific with the language. That's fair. So I would encourage all of you as you look to amending the legislation, I know amendments will be warranted, make sure that we at all times focus on what is best on the science when it comes to prevention and preparedness. And I appreciate the time, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Erskine-Smith. We're now going to move to rounds of questions, beginning with the Conservatives. Dr. Kitchen for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Appreciate that to try and get some understanding of what's going on. I'm going to ask you, just sort of throw some things at you and just see if we could, see what we can hear. I'm going to read something to you, and then I'm just going to ask you, do you believe this is basically what's part of the legislation? So, promote health, prevent and control chronic disease and injuries, prevent and control infectious diseases, prepare for and respond to public health emergencies, serve as a central point for sharing Canada's expertise with the rest of the world, apply international research and development to Canada's public health programs, and strengthen international collaboration on public health and facilitate national approaches to public health policy and planning. Would you agree that that's what this legislation is about?
In many respects, yes, Robert. At the same time, though, the legislation is really focused on taking a set of ideas around public health and ensuring that they're embedded in an accountability framework. And I want to emphasize what the legislation really is about is ensuring there's an accountability framework that would include many of the components that you're talking about. And then I would liken it to the climate accountability law that we've got, where the obligation is on the government to come up with a plan, to table the plan in Parliament on a recurring basis. There are progress reports associated with it. And this, in similar parallel fashion, would require the government to come up with a plan and to, on a recurring basis, table the plan and an updated plan every 3 years.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And I recognize the avenue for 3 years, 5 years, as you've indicated. I will expand a little bit more on that then. And add some other parts to it, as in develops and maintains national emergency response plans for the Public Health Agency of Canada and Health Canada, monitors outbreaks of global disease events, assesses public health risks during emergencies, contributes to keeping Canada's health and emergency policies in line with threats to public health security and general security for Canadians in collaboration with other federal and international health and security agencies, is responsible for the important federal public health rules governing laboratory safety and security, quarantine, and similar issues, and is the health authority in the Government of Canada on bioterrorism, emergency health services, and emergency response. Now, other than putting in the time frame to check on those, would you agree that that's part of what this legislation is about?
You're talking about, it sounds like you're talking about an authority that has responsibility for some of the measures related to pandemic prevention and preparedness. If I could put a question back so there's clarity here, the office that you are suggesting their response and listing off a set of responsibilities, where is a public-facing prevention and preparedness plan available? Where does it reside? And how can experts and third parties weigh in to say it's sufficient or it's insufficient?
So, and I will clarify that now, because basically what I was just reading you were the mandate of the Public Health Agency of Canada. So that's what we already have in place, as well as with the mandate for the Centre for Emergency Preparedness and Response Structure. Those are already in place, and the legislation basically is repeating those same things that are already in place today. We had the president of the Public Health Agency here just a couple weeks ago, in which I asked for a plan, which was the Auditor General had said that should be put in place. And she said there was a plan, which we never received because it can't be found. So to me, the legislation is good if it's going to make certain that the Public Health Agency puts it on paper so that people can see that plan. That part I love about the legislation. It talks about putting, but when we already have it in place well past was before 2016 that this came forward, and it still hasn't been done. Why will this piece of legislation make it happen when it hasn't been done when it should have been?
And I think the short answer is because there's parliamentary accountability here, and there hasn't been to date, right? So you can put anything in a mandate letter to a minister, you can put anything in a mandate letter to a government official, but unless there's ongoing accountability, and at law here, what this bill would do is require that kind of accountability to us in Parliament. Where's the plan? What does the plan say? Is the plan sufficient? And Robert, we could go off and consult with our own experts and say, this is missing. This should be worded differently. Well, not enough is being done. And it's the very same reason we've got a climate accountability law. We need a law like this.
Thank you. And I hear you, and I see that, and you and I have discussed over time, over the years. But ultimately, how do we get that in place? And I agree, when we're looking at, we're repeating things to recreate what we already have, when what we need is accountability to have the agencies that are supposed to be doing this for us doing it. Public Health Agency of Canada came into place in 2003, 2004, after the SARS epidemic, as you indicated. It was put in place to do these steps, to be prepared for the pandemic and preparing for it such that we could get it done. And so, to me, taking this legislation and saying, let's just make sure we have the report, is what, and I think that's what you're looking for, is let's just get this done and get a report on what's happened and where we succeeded and where we failed.
Not only. So the bill does ask for a report, and I've mentioned that in a review. But the core architecture and the core accountability architecture here is actually, I think, addressing the primary concern you're raising, which is it's not enough, and it wasn't enough to say, PHAC, here are your obligations. Prepare us for the next pandemic. It obviously fell off. PHAC has a number of responsibilities. Who is the individual person in PHAC who is responsible for coordinating pandemic prevention preparedness? Someone needs that core accountability, and this legislation sets that down. 2, it requires the government to table a plan to Parliament. So when you ask the PHAC for a plan, and they say, well, we have a plan, don't worry about it, and that's insufficient. We as a public have just lived through something we never thought we were going to live through. We never want to live through again, and we better have ongoing accountability from not just this government, all future governments, to ensure this never falls off the table, and there's ongoing accountability to Parliament.
Monsieur le Président, il n'y a pas de traduction présentement.
Mr. Chairman, there is no interpretation at the moment. There's none on the auxiliary channel. This is the problem that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. but they've settled the problem that you identified at the beginning.
Dr. Hanley, please, for 6 minutes.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chairman, the French channel is not working. There is French on the auxiliary channel, however.
Oui.
le canal français vient de commencer à fonctionner.
Mr. Chairman, the French channel is now working. Time heals everything. Thank you. Is everything all right? Dr. Hanley, 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. And thanks, Nate, for bringing this forward. You're passionate and articulate and effective in your role as an MP on a wide range of issues. And so one of the ways I wanted to start this off is, of all the things that you might have taken on as a private member's bill at this time, you've obviously, picked this one. You've seen a need to put forward a private member's bill in addition to everything else that should be or is happening in terms of post-pandemic reviews, preparedness, external reviews. So tell me a bit more about what motivated you and what you see was missing that led you to put this forward. I mean, I'm hearing accountability. That may be the key word, but I'll give you a chance to explain briefly about some of the rationale.
A few different things, Brendan, and I appreciate the question. So first, I came to this idea, and it was really out of a lot of work with the Climate Accountability Law. I think that's a really important piece of legislation. The UK had legislation like that in 2006 and really led the way, and we've more recently caught up to that. But I think it's a really important framework to have in place to ensure that on an existential threat like climate change, we have ongoing accountability, and no matter the government, whether it's a future conservative government, it doesn't matter what. We've got a piece of legislation in place that says the government has to continue to table plans to maintain progress reports, and we can see whether action is sufficient or insufficient in clearer terms. And so similarly, when you have an existential threat like a pandemic, and especially having lived through one, I thought, don't we need a similar architecture? And I had pitched it at one point, I think even into the 2021 platform process, and when it didn't come to fruition, it seemed when I won the private members bill lottery again, it seemed like a good place to start. And my experience with private members business has not always been that they become law when one considers the specific process of a private members bill through the very arcane process that we live through as individual legislators. But oftentimes they do get picked up by governments. And so in a perfect world, a bill like this, an architecture like this would be picked up by the government and be part of government legislation.
Thanks. And another area I was really interested, and you referred to it in your 5 minutes, was the One Health framework. It's I think it's something that is really interesting to highlight. So I want to give you another chance to highlight the importance of that. I mean, whether we talk about antimicrobial resistance, for instance, as a global threat, the climate change effects and the effect on health, on animal or human health, or in this case, the risk, I would say the ever increasing risk of spillover events. From animal to humans to trigger another pandemic. Maybe you can just talk about the importance of grounding this bill in that One Health viewpoint.
I appreciate the question, and it's absolutely essential that when we look at prevention in particular, everything runs through a One Health lens. And this is not my idea. This is an idea, as I said, that is already residing at Health Canada and Agriculture Canada by way of antimicrobial resistance. I remember sitting through a World Bank briefing many years ago when Minister Philpott was still in that role. And the risk of a superbug was highlighted even at that time. Not the human toll of a superbug, just that alone, but the economic toll. And we've seen firsthand now, having lived through a pandemic, the risk of these spillover events. And when it comes to, I'll use just a couple of examples, but you look at antimicrobial resistance. The risk of superbugs is brought on by the poor health of animals, the need for an over-reliance on antibiotics, resistance that then builds, and then a huge risk to humans as a result of initially poor animal health. And when you look at the spillover risks that we increasingly face as a matter of climate change and deforestation, you look at deforestation, you look at the increased interaction, loss of habitat, and the increased interaction as a result between animals and humans, and there's a major spillover risk. So environmental health leads to poor human health and great risks to human health. And so all of these things are interconnected, and that's the primary focus that we have to hold on to here, that human health, animal health, and environmental health are interconnected. And to prevent the next pandemic, we have to take One Health very seriously.
To maybe reflect a little bit in the pandemic that we have been living through, and if we just go back a couple of years, you and I were in very different roles. I was a regionally based CMOH for the Yukon Territory, and relying certainly on federal support through a public health agency for coordination of the response. You were an MP. I just wondered, as a sitting MP, what you were observing that maybe key words about perhaps what, again, motivated you that this was really important, given your experience as an MP during the pandemic? 10 seconds.
We witnessed the world fall apart, and I don't want to ever see the world fall apart again. And it's pretty much as simple as that.
Thank you, Mr. Erskine-Smith. Suite the Bloc Québécois.
The Bloc Québécois, Mr. Thériault, 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And welcome, Mr. Erskine-Smith. I read your bill carefully, and I understand its intent. However, as a legislator, as we speak, I would say that even though the intention of the bill is very laudable, and you've done your research, I still think you're putting the cart before the horse. I will give you a more specific example. In your introductory comments, you were talking about the concept of One Health. The director of the Popcorn Network came to speak to us on our child health study. You know the study. There will be research carried out for 2 years based on the One Health approach. But we don't yet have the conclusions, or even a hint of what research they will be undertaking. The questions you raise are indeed relevant within what you call the architecture, but as a legislator, if I were to amend or enhance the bill properly, I don't have what I need to do that, to conduct some serious work in the next days or weeks, because I believe it would take an independent public inquiry to establish exactly where we failed, not so that we can point the finger, but so that we have an overview of everything that is now in place. Many things are in place, and why is it that everything which is in place was insufficient to prepare us properly for a pandemic? In what context has everything put in place since SARS, the reports, the plans, and there are plans? There's a guide, a planning guide for the health sector, published in 2004. last updated in 2018. Deputy ministers in each province worked on the plan. They approved it. So the cooperative framework you're talking about already exists. Why is it that the planning guide has not been implemented? I want to understand why the reserve had nothing in it, why the tank was empty, as it were. We need to truly establish all the facts independently. I understand your legislative intent, and I'm sure that what you want to do is make sure that everybody will have better tools in future and that there will also be accountability. But my question is this: why is it that with all the measures already in place, the structures already in place, we might feel that there is a lack of accountability capacity? I don't have the answer to that question. Perhaps you could respond to my comments. I believe your bill and your intent might become very good after an independent investigation or inquiry that would provide facts, all the facts. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So a few different things. So in terms of a One Health approach, the evidence is in, right? So I mentioned the United Nations Environment Program. I mentioned the independent panel. I mentioned the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystems. I could have mentioned the Royal Society of Canada, which in June 2022 has a report strengthening a One Health approach to emerging zoonoses. And they say a resilient and sustainable structure for a One Health approach must be tied to function and a clear One Health agenda for Canada, accompanied by established tasks, timelines, milestones, and support for execution. This is not a debate about whether a One Health approach is necessary. So there's no cart and horse when it comes to One Health. We absolutely need a One Health approach. It's a question of execution. On the question of why were we unable to deliver on the plan that existed? Look, we as parliamentarians are asking questions after the fact. And the goal of this legislation is to ensure that as parliamentarians, we turn our minds to asking questions, to bringing the accountability function that we ought to be playing on a regular basis and in a number of different spheres to pandemic prevention and preparedness, and that we ensure we're doing our job and asking questions before the next pandemic. And if this legislation is in place, that's exactly what's going to happen. On the question of don't we wait for a review first? No, because a review is secondary to the architecture of this bill. In fact, a review wasn't even part of this bill when I initially drafted it. A review came about because the researchers at the independent panel said, well, you know, it would be really great if we had a review that informed the plan. And I thought, okay, let's do that. A review would be a great idea. But at the end of the day, we don't wait on some searching review of what's the impact of climate change and what are the best steps of preventing climate change. There are already a number of reports out. Let's get the climate accountability law in place and make sure there's action. And the same principles apply here. Do we need a searching review? Sure, of course we do. I'm not opposed to that. I agree with that.
Mais si vous parlez d'imputabilité, ne pensez.
But in talking about accountability, don't you think instead of an advisory committee? Apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Il n'y a pas assez de temps.
There's no more time. You're out of time. Mr. Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Erskine-Smith, for being before the committee. It's quite clear that there are two major parts to this bill. The first part calls for a review of the government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the second part deals with the creation of a pandemic prevention and preparedness plan. I'm going to congratulate you on half of it. I totally support the pandemic prevention preparedness plan, and couldn't be more opposed to the review provision of the bill. And I can tell you that I will be supporting the bill if the review portion of the bill is completely excised from the bill, which you and I have talked about in the past. I want to start a little bit by just saying, Mr. Erskine-Smith, you are quite correct that in 2004, the Public Health Agency of Canada was set up following SARS, and it was specifically mandated to be Canada's lead organization for planning and coordinating a national response to infectious diseases that pose a risk to public health.
That's exactly why PIAC was set up. And of course, Canadians expected that the federal government would build and maintain the capacity to protect them from future pandemic threats from that point on. I think it's quite clear that this capacity and mandate was replete with successes and failures during the COVID pandemic. Just touch on a few of them. The agency underestimated the potential danger of COVID. They continued to assess the risk as low until a week after the WHO had declared a global pandemic. A scathing internal PIAC audit released in January of 2021 found limited public health expertise at the agency, a lack of epidemiologists. They found a lack of emergency response management expertise and capacity within the agency. Communications were identified as terrible. PIAC was missing sufficient skills and capacity for risk communications. Dr. Tam said that she received information in the wrong format with inaccuracies. There were problems with Canada's emergency stockpile. The Auditor General confirmed that negligent mismanagement of Canada's emergency stockpile resulted in shortages of PPE for essential workers when COVID-19 hit. We had to throw out millions of expired PPE. There were problems verifying compliance with quarantine orders. And of course, the scandalous problem in Canada's long-term care homes showed a shocking failure in that regime. So the Pandemic Prevention Preparedness Plan is excellent. I want to stop there and talk about the review, though. This bill would have the Minister of Health, who is in charge of PHAC, appoint an advisory committee, not even an independent committee with any real powers, but an advisory committee to assess his or her performance and the performance of PHAC, which is under the aegis of the Health Minister. That is like the defendant appointing the judge. It's completely unacceptable on its own. Now, the NDP has wanted the federal government to launch an independent public inquiry under the Inquiries Act from the beginning. We're approaching, in fact, we passed the third-year anniversary of COVID. And rather than providing a transparent, independent, and comprehensive review of Canada's COVID-19 response, this bill would not do that. The measures don't meet that standard. The legislation does not provide any powers of subpoena, of documents, of people. It's not independent. It's not transparent. It's not resourced. Now, I noticed that a number of civil society actors have agreed with the NDP. Dr. David Naylor, who was chair of the Federal COVID-19 Immunity Task Force and former chair of the Federal Review of the SARS epidemic, has called for an independent review. Richard Fadden, former National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister, has called for an independent review. Dr. Adrian Levy, Dr. David Walker, Dr. David Butler-Jones have all called for such an inquiry. So my question to you is this. Are you okay with and will you support the NDP's motion when we move it to excise Section 3 and Section 4.2E of the bill to remove all parts of this bill that would have the government set up a review structure of its own and keep the part of the bill that establishes a pandemic prevention preparedness plan? Will you agree with that amendment?
In short, yes. And let me say, Don, I appreciate the proposal. Let me say that the intention was never to oust any kind of independent review. And if you remember SARS, in Ontario, we had an independent commission and a properly independent judicial commission. And then we also had, at the federal level, a National Advisory Committee on SARS and Public Health, which was more what I was imagining, and that was chaired by David Naylor. I consulted with David Naylor, by the way, in the course of putting this bill together. I at no point had intended to oust some parallel independent track. It was really to say, how do we best inform a plan and make sure a review is a component of that? But I don't want any distraction. I don't want this to be a bill to point to and say, well, that review's happening, so we don't need another more searching review. And so, to return to the short answer, yes, I completely support your proposal, and let's keep the core of the bill, which is the architecture of accountability.
Thank you. Thank you for that, and I really appreciate that honesty. The problem is that when I asked the health minister, when he was at this committee, if the federal government is prepared to launch an independent public inquiry, he said this at this committee: we are currently discussing a bill in the House that is pointing to the importance of having a review of COVID-19. So the danger here is, and from the NDP's concern is we don't want the government to view this as the independent inquiry, because in our view that would constitute a whitewash. And so we think it's very critically important that we have an independent review as well as your preparedness plan, and that's how we'll be proceeding with this bill.
Yeah, and I never considered, Don, that this would oust any kind of independent, more searching review, and so I don't think the government ought to be able to point to this bill and say, well, this bill is happening, so we're not going to do a more searching review. And my conversations with the government, similar to the conversations I've had with you, have been around, let's make sure we focus this legislative effort specifically around the Pandemic Prevention Plan and Coordinator and that accountability to Parliament, and that we leave the review out of this bill and we leave
Thank you.
it to
The
another
problem is the
process.
government has not called such an independent review to date. That's the problem.
Okay, thank you
Understood.
both. Ms. Goodridge, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation here today. It's rather challenging when we find out that we're basically only talking about half of the bill if you've already agreed and there's some kind of a deal on the books to get rid of half of the bill. It would have been nice to have just had that.
I
up
did mention
front.
it in the House. I did mention in the House at second reading that I was open to that change as well. So it's not news. As it were.
No, but saying that you're open to it and the deal has already been done is a little different. Fair enough. Thank you for that clarification. But I think one of the challenges I have with this is that from my read and as Dr. Kitchen laid out, PHAC already has this plan, and the only real difference is that there is no requirement to report to Parliament. And my experience, I'm not sure what the requirement of reporting to Parliament would do if the plan isn't actually being done and listened to. So you can have a brilliant plan. You can have an absolutely stunningly brilliant plan, but if you don't actually follow it, what is the point? And I think this is part of where Conservatives agree with the NDP that we need to have an open public inquiry into this so that we can actually look at what happened, when, what worked, what didn't, how it worked, how we didn't apply our plan, what parts of our plan did we ignore. And not every part of a plan will actually come to fruition or make sense because technology is changing so quickly. Things that could have been best practice 2 years ago are no longer best practice. If we look at the 3 years since the pandemic started, our information as to how to best prepare and protect ourselves against this infectious disease has changed dramatically. And I think that is critical. So I'm just curious, what piece about just having the reporting to Parliament do you think will make somehow a big difference in the lives of Canadians?
So in part, you just answered your own question when you said that the science changes on a regular basis and there ought to be recurring updated reports. And at the moment, there's no obligation to say there ought to be those recurring updated reports, and this imposes that kind of an obligation. The second thing to say is Mr. Kitchen listed off a series of measures that are in the mandate letter for PHAC, and some of which overlap with the bill, but not all of them overlap with the legislation. So if I point you to the responsibilities on the Minister of Industry, for example, in this legislation, including that the Minister assess and improve the manufacturing capacity in Canada with respect to vaccines. We've had, at my industry committee, a really serious examination of vaccine manufacturing and capacity in this country and the need to make sure we have that kind of national security focus on vaccines. And that's not in the mandate of PHAC.
Pardon?
So to suggest that some things are in the mandate of PHAC so this legislation is unnecessary ignores the fact that there are many things in this legislation that are not housed within the mandate of PHAC.
Mr. Genereux, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just be brief. Nate, good to see you, even though it's virtual.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I think the problem that I have with this bill, and I think it's funny that you're here at this committee with this because during the pandemic, Don, Luke, myself, Kitchen. We had, Darren Fisher, Sonia was here, Marcus. A lot of us went through we had meetings, I think it was every single day at the very beginning during the pandemic. And we got to know each other really well, which was I guess, the bonus of it. But it was a real drag of information that we were trying to get out. We were looking for kind of the solutions that some of the stuff that Don indicated were surprises to the committee, surprises to the minister. So here at that committee for a good 6-8 months, I think it was. I think we might have even been the only committee meeting for a while. It was always I think we could collectively come together and say, you know what, there'll be a independent review of everything, and we could say, you know what, whatever information someone's not sharing, whatever information maybe for whatever political purposes, or if it's privacy purposes, want to remain confidential. It was again something that we said, you know what, this will eventually come out, so we'll keep going and pushing forward. What I really worry with your bill, and I don't think it's intention in this way whatsoever, but I fear that the government has the opportunity to use it in this way and say just exactly what Don indicated, the minister's response at our committee when we go and ask, well, when is this going to happen? Because we've been talking about this for so long, and they use your bill as a shield right now to say, you know what, it's already something that's being talked about. So, you've answered a little bit, but I don't even know if I necessarily need comment from you. But I think just more of a caution
I've got a good
to
answer
it.
for you, Matt. I've
Sure.
got a good answer for you, though, Matt. Which is,
I hope the answer is short because we're out of time.
Sure. I mean, last I checked, the Liberals don't have a majority, and so if you want this bill to deliver an independent review, you can amend the bill accordingly. You can either delete it, as Don's asking, or you can work with Don and make it independent. Up to you.
Thank you both. Mr. Vancouver, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Nate. And seeing that you probably had a longer answer to that previous question, I'd give you an opportunity to provide that now before Marcus and I share time.
Appreciate it, Adam. And so, one, on the independent side of the equation, I would leave it as I answered it. On the second piece, though, which is, and I think Don correctly assessed this, which is, there are two core parts to this, and I would have said that the review is ancillary even to the pandemic prevention and preparedness plan and the obligation to table that in Parliament. That's the architecture that we're really talking about here. And there are details in what should or shouldn't be in the plan. There are amendments, I have no doubt, that ought to be made to add things, to remove things, to adjust language. That's, I think, the core focus. On the review side, delete it. If it's a problem, that was ancillary to the core focus here. And so if Matt's got a problem with it, if Don obviously has articulated a sensible challenge with it, remove it, or in your wisdom, make it a stronger review. But I think that can very easily be dealt with. And let's focus on the nuts and bolts of this, which is the obligation to table the plan, the obligation to appoint a coordinator who's going to be responsible for the plan, and then really let's make sure the language is right for what ought to be in the plan.
Well, thanks, Nate. And I want to commend you on your willingness to come here and work collaboratively. You know as well as anyone, better than most, I'd say, that the House of Commons works best when we collaborate and work together. And I think everybody in this room, certainly everybody in Parliament and most people in Canada, believe in accountability, believe in preparedness, and believe that we've learned some lessons through the pandemic, and we'd be best served as a country to learn from some of those. So again, I commend you for coming here to express the willingness to work together, to collaborate, to change the bill if necessary. And I know that Marcus has a couple of good questions, so I'll leave it over to Marcus now. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks. Thanks, Adam. And I really want to commend you, Nate, for having the cojones to take this on. This has been the number one issue facing our government for the last 3 years, and also the number one. Am I being censored already? The number one issue facing all Canadians for the past 3 years. So you certainly chose the biggest topic you could have chosen for a PMB. Now, our review of what happened with the pandemic and our plans to try to do better next time are something that's really important for our government. But I think you realize you have a real uphill battle doing this as a PMB.
and getting this passed. So I wonder, like, what's your thinking in terms of where we go from this? Do you think that this will become the basis for government legislation? And where do we go as a committee? Do we go straight? Because I'm kind of wrestling with what we do with this. Do we go line by line, clause by clause now, or should we be calling in witnesses, or where do you see this going?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, Marcus. And I would say there is an opportunity for this bill to become law by virtue of the timing of it, because I won the lottery, this arcane lottery as far as it goes. Jean Roux, by the way, knows more than anyone about the ability to get a private member's bill passed, and I was happy to help with that effort. I'm hoping I get a little help in return. And on the question of what to do as a committee, I think very simply, get the review question just out of the way. So delete that section if as Don said, I think that's a pretty fair way forward. It's causing consternation across the aisle. Just get rid of that, because that's not the principal focus of this thing. If you can make it an independent review and away you go, but otherwise just bracket that off, delete it, get rid of it, and let's focus on the nuts and bolts of this. And then otherwise, yeah, bring in experts, and I've sent Sean a list of them, but bring in experts. They will disagree with some portions. They'll have better language for other sections. But go through the obligations in the plan, and if anything's missing, add it. If particular language is a problem, change it, and make sure that there's a strong, fulsome obligation on the government in terms of what ought to be in that plan when they table it in Parliament every 3 to 5 years. And you can have the debate about 3 to 5 years as far as it goes. But I think that's where the focus of the conversation should be. We are putting in place a framework for not just this government, but all future governments, what ought to be in it to make sure that you don't have those conversations that you all had with PHAC and others in the wake of the pandemic, that we're having them before the next pandemic. What are the answers to core questions around preparedness? What are core answers to questions around prevention? And how do we make sure these answers are being answered, these questions are being answered in a very proactive way?
Again, I want to just thank you, Nate, for doing this. And we certainly have to start on this task. And I think perhaps you've started us on this task, and where it goes, I'm not sure. But I really thank you for having done it and all your hard work.
Thank you, Dr. Pelosi.
Thanks, Marcus.
Mr. Thériault, 2 minutes.
Mr. Thériault, 2.5 minutes. A quick update, or a clarification, rather. The One Health approach, I'm not saying it isn't crucial. You said it was crucial to preventing a pandemic risk, but there is a study in place, and we've provided funding for 2 years. If it is a crucial approach, and I believe it, the study group will soon table its report on child health. So why not fund that approach for the long term? That's what I was saying. You're saying scrap the review. But the review, the independent inquiry to determine what didn't work with what we already have in place, is a necessary precursor as far as I'm concerned. So I'm putting the question to you. Are you for or against an independent public inquiry?
I would support an independent process, of course. I mean, that's an easy one. I mean, the fact though is an independent process isn't a necessary prerequisite to putting a plan like this in place. And it's, of course, we should have lessons learned and they should inform ongoing efforts. But we know there have been so many reviews. There have been, and I've mentioned a few reports already, both from international institutions, other countries have undertaken reviews. There's so much already available for us to learn from. We need a piece of legislation, a set of accountability architecture in place, very much like this, to ensure that we have an obligation on the government to table plans in a public-facing way and update plans on a going-forward basis. So I don't think either one presuppose the other. Let's have an independent review, and let's also pass this legislation to ensure there's a pandemic prevention and preparedness accountability to Parliament.
But there have been a number of failures on quarantine, border management, the National Emergency Stockpile, the World Information Public Health Network. There have also been measures that, as some people said, infringed on liberties: passport, vaccines, forward transportation, mandatory vaccination for federal employees, denial of access to employment insurance. You would like us to gloss over the conclusions regarding whether such plans, the existing plans to manage a pandemic, did or did not work.
The bill doesn't ask one to gloss over any conclusion. The bill says these factors have to be considered in a plan. And so whatever conclusion an independent review comes to, or any other review for that matter, that this sets an architecture in place that can encapsulate that learning. But this doesn't make a decision to say this should have happened or that should have happened and presuppose
Parce qu'elle
any
n'existe
review.
pas présentement, cette architecture.
Because the architecture doesn't exist at the moment? You're out of time, I'm afraid.
Next, Mr. Davies, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you. I'm not going to belabor the point because, Nate, you've been very forthright, and I want to thank you for that. I just have to state again that what this country needs and what I think is required for public confidence is that there be a transparent, independent, and comprehensive review of Canada's COVID-19 response. Nothing less than that will suffice. And that's why the NDP's called for such an inquiry under the Inquiries Act. We already have legislation that sets up a process for such an inquiry. It establishes an independent chair. It would empower the inquiry to subpoena witnesses, order the production of documents, hold evidence in public and under oath. It allows them to retain appropriate experts, including counsel and technical experts, to advise them. So, to me, that's far beyond the scope of this bill, and that's why only excising that part of the bill is acceptable. But I want to just end on a positive. The work you've done on the pandemic prevention and preparedness plan, I think, is superb. You know, you've got, among other things to look at, you've got requiring a plan to look at protection of vulnerable and marginalized populations, working conditions of essential workers, the availability and management of relevant stockpiles and protective equipment, manufacturing capacity in Canada with respect to any product relevant to pandemic preparedness, including vaccines and PPE. It calls for us to look at antimicrobial resistance, disturbed habitats that could contribute to pandemic risk, such as deforestation, encroachment on wildlife habitats, etc. Measures to look at the impact of live animal markets and the importance of global biodiversity. It calls on us to look at global health equity and cooperating with international organizations and even transport routes of pathogens. So I just think it's a really comprehensive plan you've put forward. I'm going to support the second half of the bill. I'm curious to hear from other witnesses if there are any, but I just want to tell you I think you've done an excellent job in identifying the factors that ought to be looked at. If COVID taught us one thing, it's that PHAC was not able to deliver the mandate it was given. And we would be remiss as parliamentarians if we didn't recognize that and come up with a new way of holding them accountable to make sure that the next pandemic that comes, and I'm told it's not a matter of if, but when, we are not caught flat-footed and we learn the lessons of COVID. And I think the second half of your bill does that, Nate. So thank you.
Thanks, Don. And let me only say I would also be remiss because it's 4:20 to say it's been great to work with you previously, and I look forward to delivering on this with you together at the Health Committee.
Okay. Thank you. Back over to the Conservatives, Dr. Kitchen, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Nate, again, thank you for being here and presenting with us. It is appreciative, and further to sort of what Don has talked about. When I look at the second part of it, and we'll go to that second part as opposed to the first part. I think that's what Canadians want. Number one is that I think as I look at this, I see you're pointing out things that I believe are already in place. That's part of why I brought up what I did in my first line of questioning is they are already in place. And you're identifying that and making it such that although the assumption of Canadians are that PHAC would provide that information to the government, it appears that some of it may not have been provided. And this basically puts that in place to say, okay, it's got to be done. It's got to be done in this sort of time frame and that preparedness plan. So that part, I think, is a good thing as we move forward. Obviously, there are parts to it, and when we look at it, if we were to, for example, look at in clause 4F and F and G, basically what they indicate is that we need to be on top of things. And so perhaps what this will do is actually create the re-existence of GFIN, which was the Global Public Health Intelligence Network, which was in place until 2019 and then was shut down. And one of the things that we found out during COVID, when we first saw this on our table in 2020, that all of a sudden this wasn't in place to monitor these aspects. So these are things that I think are of value in there. I'm just wondering on your thoughts along those lines. Did you do any discussions with any particular people dealing with, for example, the GFIN in your as you approach the legislation?
I didn't have specific discussions with that organization, no. But I take your point that we do need, and the bill specifically speaks to the need to emphasize to describe the state of the research in relation to infectious disease prevention and preparedness, but also the establishment and interlinking of surveillance systems inside and outside of Canada, which is critical for early stage assessment of risk and making sure we're able to respond quickly and to ensure that it doesn't turn into a pandemic in many cases. So it's a good organization to have, to have attend as a witness, frankly. And I would just say, if you are able to, I know it's always tough with private members' business, but if you are able to set aside a few meetings for witnesses, I think it will really help once you bracket out the review portion, which I know has been caused more consternation and focus to Ms. Goodridge's point. But I think if we really focus in on the contents of the plan and making sure we tighten up the language there, and experts will be able to help with that, I think we'll be in good shape going forward.
Thank you. And I mean, ultimately, as we've heard around the table, and I think everyone here truly understands that, SARS wasn't the first. H1N1 was a scare which sort of petered out, but COVID-19 it came along and woke people up. And as many people will say that there's another one just around the corner. And so the idea is to have in place legislation to make certain that A, we're ahead of the game, B, that we're on top of it when it's there, and C, we're prepared for something coming down the future. And it doesn't matter which government that is, whether it's the present government or future governments or those, as been indicated, 100 years down the road. These need to be in place such that we've done the right steps and making certain that the wording is done appropriately such that it's not people found ways to evade and work around that. You would agree with that?
I think it is. Everything depends now on getting that language right in terms of what the contents of the plan ought to be. And then you guys will have to decide is between 3 and 5 years in terms of tabling of the plan. But I mean, I just want to emphasize, I suppose, on the wording of the plan. I'll use an example. The United Nations Environment Program lists 7 key disease drivers, and climate change is one as an example, but 2 of them are actually more fraught, right? So one is travel, the fact that we move around the world as freely as we do, that is a pandemic risk. Another is the increased demand for animal protein, because as Brennan Hanley mentioned, the challenges of AMR is just one example, but other countries that don't take biosecurity as seriously as we do, there is a greater pandemic risk. As I say, if there's unhealthy animals, it can lead to unhealthy humans and a real challenge on the pandemic side. And so I do think we want to talk about managing risks. And it's not about eliminating activities. It is about managing the risks and reducing the risks associated with those activities in a thoughtful way. And so if you guys can take that same kind of a thoughtful approach to at each provision, say, well, we understand what Nate's getting at, but here's a better way of phrasing it, while maintaining the core idea of managing and reducing risk, I think we'll be in a good place.
Thank you, Mr. Erskine-Smith. The last series of questions for today will come from Ms. Sito for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Nate, for update of this bill, and thank you for your sincere efforts. My question is, what is the role of surveillance and early warning system in pandemic prevention? In your view, how can this be improved through research and technology?
So I don't have a great answer in some ways, other than I know that early surveillance is absolutely essential, and technology as part of that is absolutely essential. And we need to make sure that governments, our government, all governments around the world working together, are taking this as seriously as they can. And that's really what this legislation is about. So the establishment and interlinking of surveillance systems for infectious diseases is highlighted as a factor that needs to be included in the plan. I think that's an essential part of any preparedness and prevention plan. But the details ought to be worked out by those who are expert at PHAC and in the government going forward.
Next question. During the pandemic, we saw the key importance of our medical officers of health in different regions across the country. How can provincial, municipal, and regional governments best be engaged when it comes to the legislation and pandemic prevention and preparedness?
I'm really glad you asked this question, because it's a section of the bill that I struggled with, and I don't think I landed perfectly, and I would welcome help in getting it to a better place. So when you look at section C and D, for example, there's an acknowledgement that we need sustained collaboration between the Minister of Health and provincial governments, Indigenous communities in the development of the plan in order to align approaches and address any jurisdictional challenges. And boy, do we live through many jurisdictional challenges in the course of our own pandemic response. D is I think a section that you guys could improve, because it says provide for training programs including collaborative activities with other levels of government, Indigenous communities, and relevant agencies. I didn't really mean training programs, as it were. Speaking with David Naylor, he emphasized, and others emphasized as well, the need for tabletopping and simulation exercises. The idea that you would work collaboratively as a federal government alongside provincial governments, and you would actually have simulation and municipal governments, and you have simulation exercises to test the plan that you have and improve the plan accordingly. And so that really isn't about training, it's about you could talk about training, but what I really wanted to drive at was simulation exercises with other levels of government. And so that could be a section that you could improve upon to speak directly to that concern, Sonia.
Thank you. To follow-up question, the Health Committee did study on the health human resources. We all know that there's a shortage of nurses, doctors. And did your bill also looking into that human health resources?
Yeah, so Don mentioned the subsection I speaks to working conditions of essential workers across all sectors. That would include obviously PSWs, and that would include nurses. The H, though, is probably where it speaks to it most directly, supporting local public health and primary care capacity building. And I know there are some jurisdictional challenges here. Look, primary care is ultimately delivered by provinces. Having said that, we just entered into a bilateral health accords where we as a federal government are delivering dollars and emphasizing the need to use those dollars for primary care. And so I think there is an opportunity here not to take on provincial jurisdiction. That primary care is provincial jurisdiction, but to emphasize in the course of any plan, here's the work the federal government is doing, including through PHAC as an example. So if you read the Naylor report in the wake of SARS, he emphasized the need for PHAC to deliver funding directly to public health agencies in some ways. So there are ways of thinking about unique funding opportunities. There are ways of ensuring that strings are attached in some ways. But at all times, I think we as a federal government, all levels of government, need to work together to ensure, as you say, we're addressing the health human resources challenge, and we're ensuring that there's capacity for contact tracing, there's capacity for all of the activities responding to a pandemic, but especially the healthcare response in relation to local public health and primary care.
Any to say, Nate, about your bill?
Sorry, I missed anything else?
Yeah.
Just please bring experts in. Please improve the language where you can, and then let's make sure we pass this, kick it over to the Senate, and let's get this done.
Thank you, Ms. Sidu. Thank you, Mr. Erskine-Smith. That concludes the questions for today. certainly has come as no surprise to me and probably to anyone else that knows you, Mr. Erskine Smith, that you've been incredibly thorough and insightful in your presentation today. Congratulations on getting it to this stage. You've now handed it over to us and given us a fair degree of latitude as to where it goes from here. So thank you for that. Good luck with the challenges that you have in front of you now. And once again, I really appreciate your work on this and the very informative and thoughtful way that you presented before the committee today.
Thanks, Sean. And I trust in all of you to work together to improve it and get it done. I really do. I have full confidence in all of you to work together on it. So thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. We're now going to move in camera, so we're going to suspend for 5 minutes to allow for that to happen. The meeting is suspended.